Hello YouTubers, this is something I've had on my mind to do for a while, which goes a little bit away from what I usually put up on YouTube, about the times that we are living in and the state of the world. I put a shout out on Facebook asking my friends, what worries you most about the world today? And top of the list was the world my grandchildren are going to grow up in, and the world my children are going to grow up in, and all the usual things that people do worry about: homelessness, broken laws, lawlessness, general fear and apprehension about the times we are in. There seems to be no shortage of brokenness. Broken hearts, broken marriages, broken people, broken you maybe. So what is it all about? People think of Matthew 24 as a Bible passage that is an indicator of the times that we are living in today. But what evidence is there? How do we know? Scientists and statisticians talk about empirical evidence before they'll accept anything as fact. There's plenty of people talking about the end of the world. But what actual evidence is there? And furthermore, what actual evidence is there that Matthew chapter 24, the passage in the Bible I'm dealing with today, accurately portrays the times that we are living in now? All the details of my research are in the description below. There's miles of it as well. I've really taken care, I hope, to present to you something factual and solid. Now, the word apocalypse keeps cropping up in the news lately, and I wondered, what does apocalypse mean? So I checked it out in the dictionary. The complete and final destruction of the world as described in the biblical book of Revelation. Now, if these are the end times that Jesus was speaking about, what does that entail and what does it mean for us today? The disciples came one day to ask Jesus, what are the signs of your coming and the end of the age? In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus gives an explanation to his disciples, and he says, I will return again. In the 2018 Robin Hood movie, I was struck by the statement of Little John to Robin Hood, "You're slower than the second coming." Let's watch the clip.
Well then, let's get on with it.
As slow as the second coming. Yeah, well, it's been 4 years of my life killing you.
Now, why this statement in the 2018 movie Robin Hood? Why the phrase, the second coming? What does it mean, and is there anything in it? I believe that the Armistice Day signing on the 11th of November was God calling the 11th hour on the age that we live in. 29 years later, a group of secular scientists got together and created what they called the Doomsday Clock. The Doomsday Clock was initiated in 1947. 49, the first Soviet nuclear test. 53, the first American nuclear test. 69 and 72, various treaties were signed. 81, Soviets invade Afghanistan. 84, Soviet-American relations deteriorate. 91, the Cold War ends. 98, India and Pakistan nuclearizes. 2002, the fear of terrorism and nuclearization. 07, North Korean nuclear tests. 2016, climate change and nuclear fears. 2017, the world situation worsens. And in 2018 and 19, the clock was set at 2 minutes to midnight in what the scientists call the new abnormal. Prophecy is not to scare. prophecy is to prepare. Now, I'm just covering 7 of the many prophecies that Jesus mentioned in Matthew 24. There are many more in the Bible as well, hundreds more about the days that we are living in. Earthquakes and volcanoes, false Christs, prophets and signs, wars and rumours of wars, pestilences and famines, Christians persecuted, love gone cold. And here, Jesus gives us the open secret about the hope that there is today in these times. This enigmatic fig tree in verses 32 and 35. Hold on for this, I will be explaining more. In recent decades, earthquakes have escalated enormously from about 10 events a year to over 50. The Munich reinsurance company lists catastrophic events of all natures. Geophysical events are earthquakes and volcanoes. Meteorological events are storms. Hydrological events are floods. And climatological are weather events. All are recently increasing dramatically. Severe weather events almost flatlined, but from 1950s they have increased to 350 a year. Also, an interesting phenomenon right now is the shift of the magnetic North Pole. Since 1850 there has been a slow meandering from the north of Canada to Siberia at the rate of 5 to 10 kilometres a year. Recently the magnetic North Pole has picked up speed, causing scientists to rush forward a planned adjustment due in 2020 to 2019, as the pole is now shifting at a rate of 50 to 60 kilometres a year. Now we come to the false Christs and prophets that Jesus mentioned. There are many, but I'll cover just 2. Charles Manson, a cult leader in California, whose followers murdered 9 people. Jim Jones's cult ended in the mass suicide of more than 900 of his followers. I'll leave you to name your own pet false prophet. I'm sure you'll agree there are many. Dorling Kindersley's book, The Encyclopedia of War, documents wars from AD 1000 to the present day. You can clearly see Jesus' words, there will be wars and rumours of wars, coming true. According to the independent news agency, there are only 11 countries out of the world's 195 countries that are not involved in conflict. Worse still, the world as a whole has been increasing in violence and wars since 2007. Now let's have a look at documented plagues. AIDS was first detected in 1981. The incident rate is almost a straight line upwards to 20,000 new cases a year. There are also some new emergencies of autoimmune diseases just detected in the last century. Asthma, type 1 diabetes, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis. Now, nothing much was heard of these before the 50s. A chart of global examples of modern emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases is here. I've highlighted 4. MRSA, Ebola, mad cow disease, HIV and AIDS. A curious one here, and one for concern, is biological attacks. This one lists an anthrax attack on politicians not long after 9/11. Now we come to famines from 1900 to the present day, peaking mid-century. Remember Band-Aid in the 80s? Thankfully, recent famines have reduced greatly, seemingly bucking the trend of other catastrophic increases today. Yet, charities warn that if there is no solution to the problems blighting, for example, the Yemen and Sudan, these two hot spots could bring back the Geldof famine levels of the 80s. There could be as many as 13 million deaths in the Yemen and 7 million in the Sudan. I've given details below if you want to donate to any of these. Now, you wouldn't expect famines to be found here in the UK and other prosperous countries. Not so. I volunteer in a food bank, and let's see me now working in a food bank.
Your next one will be, it's got one child. Food parcel for one, please.
Oh, food parcel for one. Thanks, Dolly. The first food bank was started in America in 1967, and then many more food banks started actually in the 80s. However, food banks didn't really take off until the 2006-7-8 financial crash. At the moment, there are about 25 countries running food banks all over the world, and there are about 2,000 food banks in the UK alone. Food banks seem to be a sign of the times, where even in wealthy countries people are in famine. Famines not only in the Yemen and the Sudan like there are now, but too close to home. Our local food bank coordinator reports that some parents go without food so that their children can eat. At a recent food bank party held for the children, it emerged that one child hadn't eaten for 2 days. Here in the prosperous West, a child hasn't eaten for 2 days. Now we come to prophecy number 5. Then they will deliver you over to be persecuted and killed, and you will be hated by all nations on account of my name. There has been Christian persecution since Nero, but Justin D. Long writes, this is the age of martyrs. From AD 33 to 1900, we have documented 14 million martyrs. During the last century, we have documented cases in excess of 26 million martyrs. I know there are martyrs of all faiths and religions, but Christianity seems to be particularly singled out. Christianity is the worst persecuted faith in the world today. Long emphasised the startling fact that more Christians have died for their faith in the 20th century than in all the previous centuries combined. Persecution since AD 33 can be seen in this graph. Christian persecution has skyrocketed. Then Jesus said, because of wickedness, the love of many shall grow cold. It's not difficult now to realise that more and more in recent years the love of many has grown cold, though indeed there have been dark times in the past. Modern charities have coined the phrase compassion fatigue. Many are desensitised. Images on our screens of starving children because of wars and disasters have less impact now because we're sadly all too familiar with them. Many don't watch. In Matthew chapter 24:10 it said, and there will be a great falling away. There has been a great falling away of faith, morals and love. Last, we come to this enigmatic, mysterious fig tree. The message of hope that Jesus refers to, though you may not recognise it as such. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its branches become tender and sprout leaves, you know the summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you will know that he is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. Jesus actually here describes the blossoming of the fig tree as summer drawing near. Now summer is a time of warmth and hope and love, and yet we're in the midst of all these dreadful calamities. Jesus compared this, what's happening today, with the birth pangs, the birth pains of a woman about to give birth to a child. My research indicates that we are in those birth pang days today. Check it out below. Matthew 24 predicts perfectly the 6 scenarios we're experiencing so far today, or as the beginning of sorrows. But the fig tree lesson gives hope in that old-fashioned word, salvation, that religious word, salvation, that Christian word, salvation. Saving from what? The end of the world, and Jesus returning to judge the world. Of another churchy word, sin. This is a sinful world, and that's why we are in such a mess. I read the other day of a new phrase I hadn't heard of. World weary. People are weary of the world and what's happening today. The parable or lesson of the fig tree brings the long awaited for hope that Jamie Foxx as Little John chided in the film is thought to be of as the slow coming of Christ's return. This will usher in a new time of peace from evil. When will this come and how? Jesus made an oblique reference to a figure that would appear in verse 15 where he said, "When you see the abomination of desolation." What is that? In the film The Kid Who Would Be King, Morgana, played by Rebecca Ferguson, coined the phrase hollow hearts and leadiness. Politicians have never had such a bad press. The world is ripe for a charismatic, dynamic leader. Not Jesus, sadly, but there is one ready for what I believe will be an apocalyptic world events that will launch him to power. A few years in post and he will do something terrible which will launch the most awful time in human history. It is then that Jesus will return to set up his kingdom of peace, justice and right. The time of the return is not known, but it will be just like the days of Noah, Jesus tells us. There will be ordinary life, and then, not to be sensational, but boom, in an hour, in a day, the second coming will happen. Be ready and be faithful. Here Jesus says, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So also shall the coming of the Son of Man be." In 1 hour, on one day, the world will change. Boom! But what can we do? What comfort is there? Is there an escape for us, for our children and our grandchildren that my Facebook friends worry about? Let Jesus explain. "For this reason you must also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. Keep watch, be ready. Who then is that faithful and wise servant?" Make sure that Jesus is returning for you. I asked Jesus to forgive me for all the wrong I'd ever done, for being a part of the problem. I told him I believed him. And do you know how powerful that is, to be told you're believed? When you say to Jesus, I believe you, he will save you from all the things that are coming upon this world. He will save you from the results of all the bad things that you have done of sin. He will save you, and he will take you to that real place, heaven, at the end of our time here. Ask him into your heart and into your life. He said he will reward all of those who do with peace. Look at this scripture. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your heart be troubled, and do not be afraid. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And what of us Christians who are observing all these things? What of us? Well, we've just read that Matthew says, watch and be ready. But just another verse in the Bible I'll go to now is Hebrews 10:24 and 25. It says, don't forsake gathering together. Don't forsake going to church. And he said, so much the more as you see the time approaching, or as you see the day approaching. The day is approaching. So get into fellowship with other Christians. Has someone in the church hurt you? I'm sorry. See if you can reconcile it. Find another church maybe. But don't forsake gathering together. What can you give to other Christians at this time who may be as bewildered as anyone else? We need mutual support. Now, if you're having trouble getting your head around all this, let me tell you that the head isn't designed for it. It's a very clever machine. If your heart is having trouble getting to grips with all this, it won't, because the heart is the seat of love and emotions. What I've explained here is a spiritual thing, and these things are spiritually discerned by those who have their eyes opened. I pray that the Lord has opened your eyes through what I've brought to you in this video clip. Thank you for listening, everyone. Please comment, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. Thank you so much for listening. God bless and take care.